Hey there YouTube, this is Mr.Lubufu and welcome back to another episode of MTG Mastery. This time we continue our lore series with Urza's Saga block. Now before we begin, if you have not seen the prior episode of the lore, I highly recommend it. This is a prequel and there is a lot to be gained by knowing what happens in the future and how the ripples of the past have appeared in the prior sets. Anyway, we now step away from the crew of the Weatherlight and take a trip into the past. Urza's past, over 4,000 years before the events of the Weatherlight. The brothers' war between Mishra and Urza, the two most powerful artificers on Dominaria, which will be covered in a future episode, is coming to a head at the Argoth Forest. Discovered accidentally by Urza's son Harbin, Argoth's rich natural resources soon prove irresistible to the brothers. Each attempts to claim those resources for himself to fuel his war efforts and to keep the other from obtaining them. War broke out between the inhabitants of the islands and the lumberjacks of Urza and Mishra. Great machines were built for cutting trees and fending off the elves, centaurs, tree folk, and other resistance. Even nature itself fought back. Meanwhile, the Frexian praetor Gix enters the island through a portal. He quickly dispatches all who witness him. Gix causes havoc in Mishra's camp, making all of his machines sentient and violent. Mishra then confronts Urza, whom he believes responsible. Mishra attacks, but Urza retaliates with a giant fireball. But under Mishra's blasted skin is not flesh and bone, but cogs and gears. Urza realizes that Mishra had been killed years ago and replaced by a Frexian machine. After realizing that his brother had become a Frexian and noticing the unseen influence of Gix on the entire war, Urza used his newly found magical skills to activate the Golgothian Silex. The outburst of energy from this instantly vaporized all but a fraction of Argoth and sent a massive shockwave across the entire plain that reached as far as a northern glacier. It even destroyed the tectonic plate beneath Argoth. Terrible as it was, it succeeded in Urza's aim to stop the Frexian influence on Dominaria. At the heart of this maelstrom of energy he has created, Urza transcends his mortal origins and takes his place as a planeswalker, the most powerful kind of spellcaster, with the ability to travel between the planes of the multiverse. Now, this is in an era of the Magic timeline called pre-mending, and I will be covering the mending in a future episode, but for now it's important to note that Urza is basically immortal, invulnerable, granted vast magical power, and can even shapeshift. Planeswalkers at that point rarely died, except at the hands of other planeswalkers. Unbalanced by both his new transformation and the catastrophic events in Argoth, Urza fixates on the beings responsible for his brother's physical and spiritual corruption, the Frexians. He uses his newfound ability to traverse the plains, seeking out his enemies, but is unable to find their home plane until he rescues Xantcha, a Frexian construct about to be executed by her kin for failing to realize her full potential. With Xantcha as his guide, Urza is finally able to planeswalk to Freckssia. He puts on his special-made armor and heads there right away. However, he finds that he has underestimated both his enemy and the terrain of the battle. Freckssia is a noxious, corrosive place, and the formidable horrors that live there attack Urza upon his arrival. Assaulted by the poisonous atmosphere and hard-pressed to defend himself, Urza is forced to make a hasty withdrawal. Before they leave, though, Xantcha reclaims her personality matrix, held in a magical mechanism called her heart, from her former masters. Wounded and ailing, Urza blindly flees from Freckssia with Xantcha in tow, his mission a failure and the advantage of surprise squandered. Urza's flight from Freckssia lands him in the company of another planeswalker, Sarah. She has sequestered herself in her own private plane devoted to healing, order, and purity. Urza and Xantcha are granted Sarah's hospitality and spent 5 years recovering from their Frexian ordeal. Once he's restored, Urza recognizes some structural similarities between Freckssia and Saga's realm that do not bode well for either plane. Artificial planes, such as these, he discovers, eventually degrade and collapse. Saga's was based on white mana, Frexians on black. This fact explains the Frexians' aggression. Their own plane will someday cease to exist, and they must find another, more stable place to live. Soon after, a Frexian assault force arrives in Saga's realm, having tracked Urza there. There is a short and devastating battle between the Frexians and Saga's defenders until the former realize their prey has escaped them. Hundreds lost their lives on either side, but Urza refused to participate in the battle. He is alarmed at the realization that Dominaria is the Frexians' target and quickly returns home with Xantcha. With Urza gone, the Frexians abandon the flight and leave the plane, but not before inflicting heavy casualties, seizing prisoners, and forever spoiling the realm's pristine wonder. Lost in the battle was also Selenia, an angel of the realm taken prisoner by the Frexians. Unaware of the damage done in his wake, Urza returns to Dominaria and attempts to organize resistance to the Frexian invasion. He has physically healed in Saga's realm, but is still mentally unbalanced from his experiences. Centuries pass. Xantcha forces a confrontation and resolution so that Urza can bring his full faculties to bear on planning the resistance. She repeatedly exposes him to a young man who is virtually identical to Mishra, named Ratip. She succeeds in calming Urza's troubled mind, but soon they are attacked again, this time, again, by the Yawgmoth Praetor, Gix. Xantcha is confronted by Gix, but he flees to Kolios. Urza, Xantcha, and Ratip pursue him. While Urza manages to slay Gix, it came at the sacrifice of Xantcha and Repeat. Urza is able to recover Xantcha's heart and puts it away until he can find the proper use for it. Urza becomes convinced that the Frexians attempted to invade once before and were driven off by an advanced but extinct race called the Thran. With a new clarity of purpose, he decides to travel back in time to meet the Thran and learn their secrets and prevent the deaths of Xantcha and Ratip. Towards this end, he and another wizard, Barin, establish a wizard's academy on the remote island of Teleria and stab it with the best and brightest mages he can find, all while taking extraordinary steps to avoid infiltration by Frexian spies. As the mysterious patron of the academy, Urza personally verifies each applicant's identity and issues an island-wide ban on adult visitors. He guides all manners of time travel experiments and constructs a mechanical being who becomes his primary tool for gathering data. Through experimentation, Urza learns that only common silver passes through the time portal undamaged. He incorporates Xantcha's personality matrix into a sentient silver golem named Karn, so it will learn and mature. The experimental time portal requires an awesome amount of power, yet the golem reports that he is able to go back in time a maximum of 2 days. Urza presses on, however, feeding more and more power into his time portal. But then disaster struck as Urza overcharged their contraption, obsessed with turning back time. The aperture exploded, causing temporal fluxes all over the island. Pockets in space in which time sped up or slowed down appeared, and half the wizards in the academy died. Urza is forced to abandon this approach to defeating the Frexians. In time, the academy is rebuilt by Barin and continues to teach and train, but Urza departs Teleria immediately after the disaster to search for more present-day information on the Thran. In the volcanic land of Shiv, Urza discovers the Mana Rig, a huge installation full of functional Thran technology. After earning the respect of the Saurian Viashino who live in the installation, Urza explores the equipment and determines its purpose: to create huge crystal batteries of energies called Power Stones that can be used to run all manner of artifact devices. Though he and the Viashino cannot operate all the necessary machines on their own, Urza begins to see the advantages of this energy source. He envisions a conglomeration of artifice, organic components, and pure magic that, when powered by such a stone, can be used together to halt the coming invasion in one fell swoop. Constructing such a complicated weapon will take decades, perhaps centuries, and Urza begins to make the necessary preparations for designing, transporting, and storing each part of his new legacy until he is ready to use it to save Dominaria. With the assistance of his student Joyra and Karn, Urza surveys the Thran Mana Rig in Shiv and uncovers his primary purpose. They discover that the key parts of the facility were designed for use by goblins. Urza and his party conclude that hostilities between the Viashino and the local goblins are territorial. The goblins' incursions into the rig are an effort to reclaim their home. To operate the rig at full capacity will require the rig's current residents, which are the Viashino, and its previous one, the goblins. Urza finds himself in the uncomfortable role of peacekeeper as he attempts to convince both groups that they should work together under his guidance. Urza negotiates with the Goblin Chieftain and the Viashino Bey through barter, compromise, and force of personality, and manages to unify all the area's residents behind his cause. The Goblins and Viashino agree to work together to produce the Thran metal framework of the Weatherlight and a functional but uncharged Power Stone. Meanwhile, Teleria suffers from the fallout of Urza's disastrous time travel experiments, and many of the Academy's students and tutors are trapped in time rifts. Some, like Teferi, are frozen in slow time and appear to move hardly at all. Others, in fast time, have grown old and raised several generations of descendants. A Frexian sleeper agent named Carrick is caught in one of these bubbles of accelerated time. As quickly as their limited resources allow, he and his small squad of negators are evolving into creatures that can survive the crossing back to normal time. An attempt to destroy the Frexians fails, and Urza only barely survives. Joyra escapes as well, but learns how to free her fellow student Teferi. With the manufactured portions of the Weatherlight underway and Baran keeping Carrick's forces in check as Urza recovers, Urza journeys to the sentient forest of Yavimaya to enlist its aid against the Frexians. Yavimaya and many of its denizens remember Urza's role in decimating Argoth, however, and he's taken captive by the power of the forest and its emissary, Multani. Urza's consciousness merges with Yavamaya's, and he's forced to experience firsthand the destruction he visited on Argoth. This also enables the forest to see and feel what Urza experienced during his failed raid on Freckssia. This communion lasts for several years, but Urza's projects in Shiv and Teleria continue, guided by his closest aides. Urza's link with Multani and Yavimaya is interrupted when Carrick's horde finally breaks free. Urza rushes to his academy's defense, inadvertently bringing Multani with him. Urza gathers all the Shivan and Telerian forces he can muster, and, with Multani's help, they destroy Carrick and his minions. Urza's cause has been graphically demonstrated to Yavimaya. If the forest doesn't help him, all of Dominaria may face the horror of Freckssia. Through Multani, Yavimaya gives Urza the Weather Seed, a large organic construct that will grow into the existing metal framework and form the Weatherlight's hull. Multani will guide the Weather Seed's growth, and Yavimaya also provides the template for a new race of fairies to help tend the seed. Urza must now charge his dormant Power Stone. He knows of only one way to energize the stone, to convert an artificially created plane into energy and to capture it inside the stone. Urza has learned that artificial planes are unstable and succumb to entropy. Once his Power Stone is charged with such a collapsing plane, it will function like an inexhaustible battery. Urza, therefore, returns to the plane created by the planeswalker Serra, where the Frexian assault has accelerated the process of decay, compelling Serra to abandon the plane. On returning, Urza finds Serra's realm darkened and bleak. It's collapsing faster than he had guessed. Those unwilling to leave their once perfect world when Sarah left are led by Radiant, a proud and cruel archangel. Radiant remembers that Urza led the Frexians to Sarah's realm in the first place and is openly hostile to the Planeswalker. Despite Urza's earnest contention that all who remain will be killed by the plane's collapse, the ruling angels refuse to give up control they've wielded since Sarah's departure, even going so far as to slaughter those who would dare leave with him. After fighting a pitched battle and rescuing as many of the willing refugees as he can, Urza has little choice but to fold the planar energy of the rapidly collapsing realm into his Power Stone, with Radiant and a handful of his military angels still inside. Back in Teleria, the mood is celebratory but guarded. The Weatherlight is ready to sail, the Legacy is nearly complete, and resistance to a Phyrexian invasion has begun to coalesce. Urza's gift for clockwork and artifice has rarely included an understanding of people, however, and the next stage of his plan is to find the Legacy's human component. He knows he must master this unfamiliar territory, or all his efforts to prepare Dominaria for the Phyrexian invasion will be wasted. At his Tolarian Academy, Urza delves into the deciphered Thran records that teach him how to steer evolution. Urza begins his bloodline project in order to breed an heir capable of wielding the Legacy. He launches this program to enhance the bloodlines of Dominarian humans in places like Benalia and Jamora, where the natives have spent generations in the same location and have developed strong ties to the land. Urza begins to construct an armory of Metathran, blue mana-based simulacra, on Teleria to be his soldiers for the coming conflict. Karn, the stalwart silver golem who had been such an integral part of the Legacy project, is relegated to the position of guarding for the developing bloodlines. The refugees Urza rescued from Sarah's collapsing realm are also shunted aside as the Planeswalker focuses his attention on his new agenda. The majority of the Tolarian scholars, including Rain, the Academy's chancellor, and Barin, Urza's longtime ally, are horrified at the immorality of Urza's experiments. There is organized resistance and protest within the staff, and some members go so far as to resign. One tutor named Gatha, however, is intrigued by what he learns and sets up his own laboratory in the harsh warrior nation of Keld. Whether due to his methods, the environment, or the nature of the Keldan subjects, Gatha's hybrids develop faster than Urza's, but are more unstable and dangerous. Gatha's tampering gives rise to an even more fearsome line of Keldan warlords, who inspire bloodlust in their troops and are in turn strengthened by that bloodlust, forming an endless loop of ever-increasing battle frenzy. Eventually, the new breed of warlords brutally seize power in Keld. Meanwhile, a young elf named Raphelos has been sent from Alanowar to the sentient forest of Yavimaya as part of a diplomatic meeting between the two forests. Raphelos meets and forms a fast friendship with Multani, Yavimaya's emissary. The entire forest is evolving to prepare for the Phyrexian invasion, focusing the more potent symbiotic life force of its denizens to quickly identify global threats and aggressively respond. The elves and other creatures of Yavimaya are becoming even more in tune with their environment and more adept at combat, evasion, and stealth tactics. Mundane creatures like turtles, storks, and even insects have developed into formidable fighting beasts. Yeah, you heard me, war turtles! Yavimaya has an opportunity to test its progress when a roving band of Phyrexians attack. Although the forest proves to be well prepared for the coming storm, Yavimaya closes its borders to continue developing its defenses without external distractions. Urza, on the other hand, is monitoring Gatha's experiments in Keld, but when Freckssia also takes notice, he is obliged to shut them down. In doing so, he attracts the attention of a small pack of Phyrexian negators, fearsome hunter-killers that have been pursuing him for centuries. He's able to destroy all but one of them, which flees the scene of the battle. With the Planeswalker in close pursuit, the Negator uses a built-in portal to escape to the nearest possible plane. Once they both complete the planar journey, Urza catches and eliminated the Frexian agent and finds himself in wrath. Urza quickly surveys the operations of the artificial plane under the dominion of its Evansar, Davol, and realizes what wrath is and how it fits into the larger invasion scheme. He also meets Lina of the Soltari and agrees to help her people escape the Shadow World in exchange for their assistance once the invasion begins. Urza planeswalks back to Dominaria and rushes to complete the organic component of his legacy ahead of schedule. By now, the Frexians have discovered the existence of Urza's Bloodlines experiment, but not what its purpose is. Their agents begin to attack the regions where Urza has been most active, and Karn risks everything to save the developing Benalish bloodline of the Caption clan. After the Frexians devastate an entire Caption village, the Silver Golem takes the only survivor, an infant named Gerard, to distant Jamura for safekeeping. The millennia-long struggle between Urza and Freckssia approaches its endgame. Titanic forces have been mustered on both sides, battle strategies have been honed to surgical precision, and the final preparations are underway. All that remains for the combatants is joining battle. No matter who prevails and who is destroyed, Dominaria will never be the same. And that ends this episode of MTG Mastery covering Earth Saga block lore. See you guys next time, where we begin to cover the tragic and yet awesome story of the next block. I want to thank you guys all for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of lore, and I will see you guys next time. Thank you all for watching this episode of MTG Mastery. If you guys are interested in any of the other videos in this series, whether it be lore, draft strategies, pack analysis, or the pack openings themselves, go ahead and click on the annotations now to be taken to playlists with the full list of all uploaded content of that type. Thank you guys all for watching. Rate, comment, and subscribe.